And we are back at it again. Fourth in fantasy, your dynasty playbook for fantasy wins, or your fantasy playbook for dynasty wins. I'm gonna get
One
that
of
shit
those.
right.
It's one of
I'm
those.
gonna
Just
get
keep
that shit.
saying
I'm
it.
promise you. I'm gonna get it right, baby. I have so many in my goddamn head. It's hard to keep up. But once again, it's fourth in fantasy with another episode. I am Glenn, but you already knew that, and this is my guy.
Siriaco. Guys, gals, y'all can call me Rocco.
And we feeling good. It's another day, another dollar to talk about sports with y'all. Nevertheless, we still are doing rookie drafts. We actually are in a startup draft, and I forgot how painfully slow the motherfuckers can be. But nevertheless, I feel like I picked up I drafted a pretty good team in this startup. So and we don't do if I am joining a startup, it's not free at this point. So I think I've kind of had it with free leagues and noticed what kind of people sometimes
Free leagues attract free ass, broke ass mofos.
basically, and they very much are the type of people to start a draft and leave right in the middle of it. Who got time for that? At least if you got some skin in the game, I know at least there's less of a chance of somebody jumping the league if they put some little bit of moolah down. But
The dude's
nevertheless,
a complete jagoff, is what you're saying.
fuck offs, jack offs, all of them. But we going to keep the series going. We done quarterbacks. We did running backs. Now it's time to go ahead with them wide receivers, my favorite position to one evaluate and just to talk about in general because
Very
that's kind of
underrated
how
position in this draft as well.
100%. When people talked about this wasn't the strongest wide receiver class, at least not compared to last year, and that's a given, right? Last year's class had Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Lat McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr. to just to name a few.
Super
I
top
still
heavy.
super top heavy. I still liked, but that's not to bring down this class. No, there wasn't a lot of blue chip type of guys, if you will. But nevertheless, I think there was guys that could add some value to a team, whether it's a T Mac, Tetory McMillan, Amika Ibuka, Matthew Golden, Trey Harris, you know, numerous of guys that got, I'll say, pretty good landing spots. But I'll stop talking. Let's look through these wide receivers, and we're gonna look by round. We're not gonna go too far down the list because, goddamn, there was a lot more wide receivers taken than there were running backs. So that would be almost a 2 hour episode. But let's get it nice, hot, popping, and ready, y'all. With that first pick, y'all already know who it was. You already know who was the first pick, which broke my fucking heart because I thought it was going. I thought it really all throughout the off-season draft, draft cycle, it was talked about. Ted McMillan was going to drop out of the top 10, which is working for me because I wanted my Dallas Cowboys. And from the sounds of it, he was the pick. If he made it out of the top, if he made it out of the top 10 and he made it to us, our 12th pick, T Mac was going to be it. But never, I can't, no, I still feel good with our pick. But he went to the Carolina Panthers at the eighth overall pick in the first round. So he went in that top 10, wonderful draft capital to a team that very much needed a wide receiver one. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a Xavier Leggett truther. I don't care. That's one hill I'll die on. I think needs he needed just more time, and then he had the injuries last year, so he can never really put it all together. But I think he has the physical tools to be good, and also now he doesn't have the pressure of being the guy. Ted McMillan will be the guy, and Xavier Leggett can just help along. And then you got Jalen Coker, coke heads out there, bow, 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 bow.
I'm one
You know
of
what
them.
I'm saying? So I think it was really good spot for Ted McMillan, Bryce Young, who came on strong last year. You have Dave Canellis as your as your head coach, and then I think relatively they have done themselves a good job in the for their running back room. Still having Chuba, shout out to him. I know I'm a diehard Chuba fan. And then they added Rico Dowdle, and then to go along in the draft, they added Trevor Etienne. So who is an all around, all you can do type of running back. So I think that running back group overall, the offense should take a leap forward,
Hmm.
and also I think they're in a not in a as tough of division as you would think of other teams.
Now,
But
when you got the
how
Saints
do
in it,
suck ass, belt to booty, if you will.
I
Now, Rocco,
wish.
Rock, tell me something. How did you feel about that landing spot for Tetairoa McMillan going to the Carolina Panthers?
I think it completely solidified him as the number two in rookie drafts, and I think it's kind of nuts that Amarian Hampton has kind of jumped him at this stage because I mean, Tetaroa McMillan was the number two throughout most of the process for a lot
Yeah,
of people, including
yeah,
myself. And then Hampton went to the Chargers, and all of a sudden he's like the undisputed number two. But I will say that after Ashton Genty, it gets
mm.
kind of crazy. I've seen Hunter go at two. I've seen
I see Cam
Ted go
Ward
at
at one or
two. I've
two.
seen Hampton
Uh,
go two. I've seen Ward go two. So it's just a grab bag after Genty. But what I will say is wheels up for Ted. I mean,
yes,
honestly, um, you know, the pressure's on Bryce Young to see if he can build on last year's second half success that he had after he was reinserted into the lineup after playing abysmal for most of his career. So if he can build on that, he finally has a weapon set, good offensive line, good running backs. And Tet is going to be basically the face of that offense. He can kind of walk right in and just be the best player on that offense pretty
yeah,
quickly.
and
I mean, you're talking about a guy that's 6'5", 212, has good movement skills, good yards after catch. He's played a lot out wide. He's played a lot in the, not a lot, but he's played about 22%,
he did about
twenty-three percent in the slot.
mhm.
So
He
he
explored it a
can
little
move
bit.
between out wide to slot. You
Mm.
can move Coker to the Z, or maybe even your guy Country. You can move him out to the Z, or kind of
Mm.
rotate those guys. But I think Tet is what I was hoping the Patriots would do because he kind of slots in the rest of those wide receivers into tenable roles. Now you got,
No.
instead of Coker, maybe Coker. I keep forgetting Country's name. You just said it.
Oh, Xavier Leggett.
Xavier Leggett.
Mm.
You even got Adam Thielen. Now those guys can slide in and kind of figure out who's going to be the two. I like Coker, um, but Leggett is an amazing athlete. He has opportunity himself. So now you can slide those three other receivers in, and now you have the looks of a real ass offense. So
Mm.
I love it. I think we can see him. I mean, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be looking at 120 year one targets as probably a floor for this guy. I mean,
That's it, the
he's going to
floor.
command targets, and he's going to be a movable guy that they can move across the field.
Mm.
He's going to play a lot of time in the slot. A lot of time in the slot, most of his time out wide. I guess the only question that I may have
Mhm.
is, do we think Bryce Young can consistently get him the ball on the outside?
I mean, when you take somebody eighth overall, I think the plan is to get that guy. You took him high enough. Just the plan is to get that guy the ball, right? And I don't
Mm-hmm.
think you have. I don't think any other receiver in that group is going to take targets that the majority of targets away from him. You still got Adam Thielen, like you said, Xavier Leggett. They just signed Hunter Renfro. He might not even make camp, but
Hmm.
nevertheless, he is a
But
body. You got
but
Jalen
none of
Coker.
those, yeah, but and none of those guys, can compete with Tetaroa McMillan's talent
Correct.
and
Yep.
draft status
Yep.
and pedigree. So,
Yep.
there should be no competition for wide receiver one on that team.
I agree, and I think it raises Bryce Young's fantasy value. I think it raises Chuba Hubbard's fantasy value just a tad because
Hmm.
teams are not going to be able to just stack the box. They're going to be able, or hopefully able, to move the ball. Xavier Leggett, I
Hmm.
think this. Some people be like, "Oh, if they add a receiver, that's going to hurt his value." I actually think, like I said before, I think that helps his value because now he doesn't have to be the guy. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So he can. He's not going to be the guy that team, or not that he was before, but he gets more help. So I think the Carolina Panthers did good. They very much
Yeah.
needed a receiver there, and they were talking all draft
Hmm.
cycle like we like our guys. We're not drafting a receiver, but it was a little nugget was that Bryce Young went to bat to select T Mac. He wanted
Hmm.
him on his team, so I think the chemistry off bat should be good. That moves us to our next guy, and what was funny was when I was seeing the draft, it went the first three went exactly how my rankings were. Ted McMillan, Amika Ibuka, Matthew Golden is how I had
Hmm.
those top three. Amika Ibuka goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at overall 19 in the first round. So he does get first round draft capital, which we all thought we never. If you thought he was going out the first round, I might have to check on your brain patterns real quick. But nevertheless, he goes to a place that not everyone was too happy with this landing spot because they already have Mike Evans, they have Chris Godwin, they have Jalen McMillan. Just depending on how big of a Jalen McMillan person you was, I didn't have many shares, so him getting drafted there didn't fuck me over. If it did you, here's a tissue, you'll be okay. Now, what I think people need to understand is, I think Amika's going. I don't even think draft capital tells it. Is going to be Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Amika Abuka as your starting three. And
Hmm.
then Jalen McMillan can come in as your wide receiver for a really good wide receiver. I feel like that's a good thing for your offense. Maybe not for fantasy purposes, but for the overall offense. Jalen
Also,
McMillan, go ahead.
and I mean to jump in, but also our guy
Mhm.
Angelo has some serious doubts as to how quickly Godden will be able to recover from this injury. We got to remember that his foot turned completely around, so he may be slow out the gate if
Mhm.
he's right at all. He's definitely a candidate for pup. So um, this move kind of signals a little bit um, that maybe they had their doubts about him being able to come back right away.
Yeah, and hopefully, it was a dislocated ankle, and I remember being on a cruise when this happened, and I'm trying to keep up with my games for the week, and I'm like, "Oh, Godwin having a decent game, cool." And then I was like, "If he can get a touchdown, some more yards, I'm good." I don't watch the rest of the game because we go do something else on the cruise, and I wake up in the morning, Chris Godwin, dislocated ankle, done for the season. I'm like, bruh, what what the fuck? And I just had
Immediately
and
pumped.
he was literally going on a tear that first like
Oh yeah,
7 to 8 weeks in the
he
NFL.
was a
He
wide
was
receiver like maybe eight. He was like up
mhm,
there.
he was having an amazing season. So when that particularly happened, I think the Buccaneers realized when Mike Evans was having his injury issues, and then you had Chris Godwin have his injury issues, that offense went stale, and it went stale quick, right? It went from an offense that was humming. Baker Mayfield was throwing touchdown on touchdown,
Hmm.
and then it all kind of just slowed down a bit. And
What?
there was a reason for that. Go ahead.
No, when K. Dotton becomes your number one receiving target, you
I'm
are in
telling you,
trouble.
and you're hella trouble. That's and don't get me
You
wrong,
are in trouble.
I like Kate Auden, so that's not to shit on Kate Auden, but at the same
A
time,
little bit, a little
when he comes to the
bit.
number when he comes to the number two option, I feel like all right, cool. Now he was getting peppered with targets, but nothing was really happening, and then they stopped
hmm
that, and then now you really only have Jalen McMillan. They had the dude or Sterling Shepard that was throwing him out there. It wasn't looking sexy. So Amiga Buka comes in where he's was fairly healthy throughout his Ohio State career, and he was, like I said, he was wide receiver two on my board. I
hmm
think this really does for the longevity of the wide receiver group. Uh, it does. Chris Godwin, I believe he's either 28 or will be 29. Mike Evans is 30, going to be and going
hmm
into his, I believe, either 11th or 12th year in the NFL. So these guys are getting up there in age, and this helps you keep the group a little fresh. Those
hmm
injuries start to nip up a little bit, but nevertheless, I think still a good spot for him. Maybe not the sexiest for short term, but for the long term, I think it's a good spot when you have a good quarterback.
I, 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 I think there's a chance he can he can start to earn targets, on a pretty regular
Too.
basis
Mhm.
as as early as year one because,
I'm telling you,
like we
year one,
said,
yeah.
Godwin may not be right. Um, Mike Evans is old and he had a bit of a down season last year. Hopefully that, as a guy that just drafted Mike Evans, hopefully that's not the cliff coming. But I mean, it very well could come. I mean, he's played many years and he plays a physical type of style where he gets bodied a lot. And then you got Jalen McMillan who's not going to stand in his way. So there's a very real path for Ibuka to be a stud in year one, and he plays in a position uh, uh, on the field that is a target heavy position because he's basically in college he's basically been a slot only player. 73% of his routes have come out of the slot. I mean,
Mm.
he did have 30% out wide as a sophomore in a fully healthy year, so he has shown some ability to do it. But I mean, you don't draft a guy that's that good in the slot to not play him in the slot. So you immediately park him at slot. I think Godwin goes to the Z, and Mike Evans is still at X, and you pepper in McMillan, who could start early in the season if Godwin's not right. So I think there's a very real path for targets. I know some of the guys in one of our group chats on Discord, they weren't happy about it, but I was just ecstatic when I first heard it because I see the path for him to be a monster. And people talk about Amon Ross St. Brown clone. I know our guy Max was talking about when he drafted him today, but he has the path to get
Yeah,
those kind of targets quickly.
I agree. Especially like we said, and he's going to get very much used in the year one,
hmm
and we're going to see where the rest of that goes. I think he once again he's going to be really good for Baker Mayfield and that whole offense in general. To our third wide receiver that went off the board, and some people might have had him at the wide receiver too. It really is a toss up. And what flavor ice cream you like? Matthew Golden went to the Green Bay Packers at overall 23 first round. So he got, once again, first round capital. And let's be honest, Matthew Golden didn't have the most sexiest analytical profile out there, right? He
hmm
had the stats towards the end of the year, and you could very much, there's context to that. There's Texas. He wasn't the main feature of the Texas offense at the beginning of the year, and then towards the end is when they started, featuring him more and becoming more of that go-to guy. We saw him go off against Georgia, which is good competition. I'm really big on how guys perform when they're playing higher level competition. It doesn't get much higher than Georgia, and then he had a really good performance, goes out, has a really good performance against Arizona State once again. So I think, and then he goes into a situation with the Green Bay Packers is he could arguably be wide receiver one right now. the best wide receiver they have on the roster that does wide receiver things. The only thing that worries me about the Green Bay Packers is that their offense is kind of weird, and
Hmm.
they don't really pepper targets to one guy. They spread it around. Love gets it to a multiple uh, receivers out there, whether it was Christian Watson before the knee or Romeo Dobbs. You got, you know, now Matthew Golden, Josh Jacobs. I feel like I'm missing. Oh, Wicks. So he had numerous of receivers that he tried. Tucker Craft, Musgrave before the injury. So I think Matthew Golden can come in, one, be a great route runner, be the deep threat, because since you lost with Christian Watson and the ACL injury, and compete. And
Yep.
with you taking him at that 23 spot, it's really about just giving him the opportunities to be successful. And just don't put. The only thing I hate about it is that he chose 22 as as his number. Shows trying to figure that out. It looks odd. I think he's trying to go that Devin Hester route. But Matthew Golden, he had one of the best deep grades in the wide receiver class. So I think for what the Packers want to do, they have a creative play caller. Let's
Hmm.
see what he can do, and then where you're having to grab him. Shit, I've been able to sometimes get Matthew Golden that early turnaround of the second round. So the 201, the
Yeah.
202, that 203 area, more of the 201 or 202. See him going there, but it's I think that's good value for potentially what he could provide for you.
I think he's one of the ultimate tests. You know, sometimes in our community they have your film watchers and then you have your metrics people. I think we kind of combo both a little bit. But his stats are definitely not eye popping. Um, I think part of that was he was in a bad situation to start his career, and he wasn't used exactly correctly
Mm,
in Texas until late in the season. But as you can see, he's a reception perception kind of guy that kind of can you're looking at the sea of green and you see he can you know have success in multiple different type of routes,
mm,
and I think that is the allure with him. The fact that how do we fix that? There we go. I think that's the allure with him because he's basically going into a wide receiver room where he has the chance. He's going to be the highest drafted guy in that room. He's going to be the guy that most looks like he could be a number one wide receiver. He's a guy that can get open to all levels of the field, which basically none of the other guys in that room can. You got Jaden Reed, who at this point I had promise for, but he's starting to look more like a gadget player
mm,
and like a poor man's Debo Samuel. You got Dubes, who is a solid receiver with solid hands, but sometimes he has a bad attitude and he's not a fantastic athlete, which Matthew Golden is by evidence of his 4.29 40 speed. So um, yeah, and Wicks can't hold on to the ball. So and Christian Watson is oft injured. So I think this team needs exactly the traits that Matthew Golden is bringing to the table. He's the one that can get open to all levels of the field. And you saw it last season. You saw a team in desperate need of a guy that can get open often. That's why they pivoted from a pass happy team in 2023 to a team that just pounded Josh Jacobs over and over
yeah.
again. And that kind of derailed their season because they had no other pitch that they can go to. Because in the playoffs, you can't just be a run heavy team. You got to be able to show the pass, and they could not. So that's why they drafted this guy in the first round to be their wide receiver one. Will he do it? I don't know, but he has the opportunity. And if he hits, he's going to hit fucking hard.
I don't think I can say it better than you did, Rocco.
And one more
He,
thing, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. The One of the best film watchers I know, besides yourself, has Matthew Golden as his WR1 in this class.
That's
Fantasy Jesus.
there was a lot of people that might have had that same take after he ran a 4.29 at the combine. Me, no, because combines with 40-yard dashes don't particularly bounce you up the rankings. It is. I think it's an added nugget. I think
Hmm.
that it is nice to have if you did run a 4.29. It's nice to have on your profile, but it doesn't make or break your profile for me. If it won't take you from a good to great player, I'll say that. Uh,
Yeah.
I know. I guess there was one player that we did potentially skip over because he wasn't. It didn't. He actually. Well, I'm looking. I'm using ESPN. I'm looking at position by round. I'm looking at the receivers. They don't have Travis Hunter in that motherfucker. They have him listed as a corner. So,
Unbelievable.
but we're not going to, since Mr. Cohen has already established that Travis Hunter is going to be working with the wide receivers first and then the corners. We can speak on him a little bit. I believe, oh, I'm remembering correctly, the Jacksonville Jaguars traded up to the second overall. One, mind you, they have the youngest general manager right now, which I believe he's 33. So it was a ballsy move. It sounds like a millennial type move because we just carry our nuts how we do. But he went out. He first off, it's his first year as a GM. I think he needs to do something to make a splash. And what else does he do? Trade up to get Travis Hunter, Mister Two Way himself, Mister Heisman himself, and I think honestly one of the best landing spots out of all one of the best landing spots of all the wide receivers, just because he's going to a situation where you already get a good quarterback. I know there's some people that think Trevor Lawrence stinks. Fuck your opinion, sorry, but no, I mean,
He
I
has,
don't think he
but he
stinks.
needs to do better.
I don't know. I'm with you on that. I'm not saying that he doesn't have flaws. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve critique. But I also feel like people sell him short, and he's done a few things so far in his career that gives you glimpses, that gives you some type of positive reinforcement that he can be a good quarterback for you. And then you toss in Brian Thomas Jr., who showed out his rookie year. Travis Hunter doesn't have to come into this office and be the guy. He got Brian Thomas for that, and then you keep going. Depends on how you feel about ETN. I think he can be saved, but we'll see how he's featured in that offense. You still got Bisbee, where he had certain splashes himself. We saw some good games from Britton Strange. They signed Dynamic Brown. They still got Parker Washington, who I think is serviceable. And then to go on their play caller, Liam Cohen, who was the offensive play caller for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year and a few of the seasons before. I think, and people be like, oh, since Brian Thomas is there, that's going to cap the potential of what Travis Hunter can do. I don't agree with that. Actually, I think how their play styles, I think it fits well. I think they have a very symbiotic. I just butchered the fuck out of that word.
Symbiotic.
Symbiotic. There we go. They have a very symbiotic relationship where they can play together and both potentially eat. I still think in a world, Brian Thomas and I feel like if you don't have it this way, it's a tragedy. This year, hot take, both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter will have 1,000-yard seasons.
Oh, that's
I'm,
strong.
yeah, buddy. They're both going to have 1,000-yard seasons. And it's going to be up to the organization to make that happen. I think you have to put Travis in the best position possible. You also have to save him from himself. Let him also. You also, need to let him do what he does best. He's one of the better to do it a wide receiver and as a corner. So let him do his thing. Let him and Brian Thomas and Lawrence gel together. And I think you have a pretty sexy offense starting to brew in 2025. But let's see if the Jaguars make some noise, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I couldn't. It was kind of weird. I couldn't find him on PFF. I don't know if it's just the weird
No,
league limit.
it's how they sometimes like there's some players they change their draft year so they weren't showing up. But also you check their weeks. Is it weeks? Is it regular season and post, or does it say All
Yeah,
Star?
it was all. It was all,
Yeah,
but just look at I like to be honest, I didn't even know his counting stats are fucking ridiculous. Like 2024, 96 receptions, 1258, 15 fucking touchdowns. For a guy that played both ways, that's just nuts. I
nuts,
think
crazy as
the
fuck.
I think the point that he feels a little riskier than other
Yeah,
prospects
yeah.
is the fact that he probably will play a good percentage of plays on both sides. And like our guy Debro was saying, can he hold up physically to that much of a workload? I don't know. We're gonna have to find out. But that is the risk of it. Guys get injured. With regular workloads. The good thing is he'll be on the outside. It's not like he'll be in the trenches. Getting rolled up on every play. But that is the still a bit of a concern. The other concern is that that team invested zero in the offensive line, so you're going to see Trevor Lawrence continue to run for his life, and maybe that's one of the reasons he's so busted is because their line has been atrocious for the last few years. Like they put nothing into the offensive line, so that worries me. But as far as weapons, I mean, they're putting together some pretty fucking nice weapons between the two receivers on the outside. You got Diami Brown who could probably play in the slot, and you got just a joker of a weapon with Brashard Tootin, who's also running super fast. So you're looking at what could look like a track team. So maybe these guys can get open and get open quickly to kind of negate the offensive line issue, and maybe Duval can come up with some kind
Duval.
can come up with some kind of plan, that kind of negates some of their offensive line issues. But for a first time in a long time, that team has excitement.
They
So
got some sexiness around to it.
they're starting to build an identity, and they have some sexy pieces on offense. So I don't know how it's all going to come together in year one, but my Trevor Lawrence stonks are excited, and hopefully he can kind of rebuild some of his career that showed promise. I mean, we're talking about a guy that made it to the playoffs early in his career, and I think he came back on Herbert from like what 21, 28 points down.
Yeah, so I
So
think it's
he
gonna be
showed
good.
he
It's,
has the ability. It's just he has been in a shit organization who has done him no favors. So hopefully he's not broken and he can like rebuild some of his uh, previously shown talent.
and the last note on Travis Hunter. I'm in the rookie drafts. I'm selecting him anywhere from that 102 to 105, 106. Honestly, it's I feel comfortable selecting him at the 102. Definitely not selecting him at the 101 unless it's maybe IDP, and even then, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still probably going with Genty. But uh, with that 102, I feel comfortable. That 103, even better. 104, 105. That's
I, I
the going rate I see with Travis Hunter.
I have him at my 1.3, but I'm starting to rethink it. So in my 2.0, he may move down slightly just because of the inherent risk with him, but he's still just a wonderful pick in the middle of the first round with just unlimited upside. Just look at the numbers he put up at Colorado.
Mm. Now let's get into the second round receivers, which is still good draft capital. You don't have to be a first round receiver to hit. At that second, the first receiver to actually come out in the second round was Jaden Higgins to the Houston Texans, who we all thought were going to get a receiver in this draft just because of all the injuries with Tank Dell and them being light at the position. Nico can't do everything. He can't do everything. So they went out and got Jaden Higgins, and depending on who you talk to, I've saw it anywhere where someone thought Jaden Higgins was wide receiver two in this draft. I believe I'm remembering my pre-draft rankings correctly. I think he was wide receiver six for me, but he's a big guy who can run routes. One of the best hands in the draft, and I think he's going to do wonderful things with Nico. And then to go with Stroud, to go with Mixon. Um, that offensive line is a little wishy washy. They lost some guy, well, traded some guys away. I should say like that. So Jaden Higgins, and then also he got his. I will get to uh, his the other wide receiver that was taken by the Houston Texans that would be familiar with Jaden Higgins. Wink, wink, wink. But
Hmm.
uh, I think it's a really good landing spot. It might seem like it's a crowded wide receiver group right now, but promise you, John Mechie isn't really. He had his chance last year to show what he really had in store or what he really had to provide as a
And
asset to the offense.
and and props out of him to him for coming back from cancer, but
Yeah, shout out to you.
um,
Yeah,
he just hasn't shown the ability to be more than a
yeah,
tertiary or maybe like a fourth or fifth rotational type of guy. So
yeah.
hopefully he can hang in the league and get some reps and get better. My heart goes out to him, but him as a number two is just not working for Houston.
Yeah, he's a solid wide receiver four. Jaden Higgins is going to
Hmm.
be, or at least he could be your wide receiver two going into the season, and then hold that. Once again, think that's where I've gotten Jaden Higgins, and relatively where you're picking him up. There's some other guys around there that we will get into discussions of, but I picked up Jaden Higgins a few times because I actually do like the landing spot, and I'm trying to diversify my rookie picks on who I select, so I'm not all in on one guy or two. Or have too much shares of one guy. He ends up getting fucked. Now my fantasy teams are, or at least my rookies ain't looking too sexy. But good spot for Jaden Higgins, and he's going anywhere from that 201 to 205, 206 area. That early to mid second for Jaden Higgins, and I think that's even a bargain for him to where he could have potential value of a first rounder in year one. Anything you want to add for Jaden
Yeah.
Higgins?
Oh yeah. I think I think what we got was signal from the Houston Texans that they have a franchise quarterback and they're investing in passing weapons for him. I know they traded Tunsil, but they've also picked up some guys in free agency and in the draft, which I think can kind of gives them some guys to where it's not like the Jaguar situation where they just basically did nothing. These the Texans did address offensive line in the draft and through free agency, but I think we got is a big time signal that they are not going to let what happened last year, where they had nobody to throw to once
He had
Nico
me.
Collins
He
went
was
down.
doing. He was doing to
Yeah,
me.
he was throwing to you. They were picking up people from Target. People working at the gas station.
Yeah,
Anytime Dick Harry was getting catches, Xavier Hutchinson and the previously mentioned Mechie were like top two options for that team, and it just did not work. I mean,
yeah,
you have to have baseline level of competency out there. So now, when you're bringing out Nico Collins, you're bringing out Christian Kirk, you drafted Higgins, you drafted his college teammate.
yeah,
Now you see a team that is like, we are never going to let the situation that happened to our franchise happen again. He will never go without having weapons and having backups to those weapons.
yeah.
So I actually love what they did to that team. The only thing I kind of worry about is, you know, when you look at receiving, you look at it as a pie, and you already know Nico is getting his.
Of
Um,
course.
Kurt,
But
was brought in to man the slot,
he's starting
so
slot, yeah.
so so you can kind of, at least for year one, you can kind of guarantee he's going to get some looks. And now you got Higgins and his teammate to kind of battle out for the rest. But if you want to look at a fucking prospect, this guy was
Mm,
second in PFF receiving grade last year, and that's all across the whole NFL. For minimum targets of 20%. And also, crazy thing about his career is he's got 7 drops his whole 4-year
yeah.
career. That's less than 2 a year. And the last 2 years, this is the strongest signal for elite wide receiver yards per route run. 3 as a junior and
Mm,
2.66 last year, which easily clears that 2.4 ish kind of mark for guys that that's a stat we look for guys that are going to produce in the NFL. So he's got the whole package. I mean, he played 70% out wide, but he also played 30% in the slot. So he's a
yeah, for a
guy that
big
can
guy.
kind of be a
Hmm.
versatile piece to move, and will give him more opportunities, you know, to kind of get in where he could fit in. As Noel, you know, to the naked eye seems mostly a slot, maybe a Z. You got a little bit more versatility with Higgins, so I think he may be a patient play, but I think he's a guy that could really pay off.
Speaking of slot receivers, he might be the slot guy of the draft. Luther Burden, the third, goes to the Chicago Bears
Mm-hmm.
at seventh overall in the seventh round. Sorry, second round. Depending on how you feel, who you are, who's on your team, you were probably upset. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. If you're a DJ Moore fan or DJ Moore owner, you probably was a little pissed. If you're a Romeo Adunze, even though I don't feel like I think Luther Burden, honestly, the person who most probably gets hurt the most out of this is DJ Moore. But then if you're out there drafting Colston Loveland, it's just a lot of mouths to feed.
Mm-hmm.
It could end up dropping by the more as the season goes. We have injuries. Shoot, next year someone gets traded. Shit, we heard talks of this year of DJ Moore being traded potentially to my Cowboys. I mean, it might not. I don't think it'll happen. I think that's too much money. But his contract is relatively friendly for a wide receiver two type. I think his contract is roughly around what wide receiver twos are getting paid. Basically, like a Devontae Smith, he's basically getting paid that kind of money. So Luther Burton, I think, comes into the situation once again. He doesn't have to come and be the guy, and you're getting Ben Johnson as your coach, wonderful play caller. You're getting Caleb Williams as your quarterback. Depends on who you talk to. Some people are high on Caleb. Some people are Ben Johnson. We'll see if he can bring out the potential. But I think I wouldn't have too high expectations out of Luther his first year in the NFL. Like I don't if he ends up having a 1,000 yard season, bravo. I personally
A
don't
lot of
see it.
people would need to get hurt for that to happen.
So it's and then where you're selecting them roughly around the same area where you're taking a Jaden Higgins. And don't
Mm-hmm.
get me wrong, have I seen Luther Burden go very late, like the 112? Yes, but that realistic area of where I see him go on an average anywhere between that 201 to shit, maybe even 207. So because
I think
he's
206 is kind of like the cutoff. That's
yeah.
where the cliff happens.
So yeah, 'cause I think people are putting a little bit of light into of yes, he is in an offense where there's a lot of miles. We don't think he's going to get a ton of volume of targets, and that's something that you have to maybe put into the equation in year one. But long term wise, let's say they do move off of DJ Moore. Now you got something. Now we cooking with fish oil. You know what I'm saying? So I think Luther Burden, just depending on now, I probably would have picked Jaden Higgins over Luther Burden just because of the situation. I also believe I had no, I think I had Luther Burden one spot ahead of Jaden Higgins, but like I said, you can't really go wrong with Luther Burden just depending on what you're needing out of him in year one. Do you need him to be that guy on your team? If so, I probably would go a different direction. But if you could take your time with him, let him, grow in year one and then come into his role in year two, you might be cooking with something. Patience. That's the key word of the night. Patience. You feel me? Now,
We don't have no fucking patience in these
uh,
streets.
now we have our next receiver who also got a nice little landing spot. Shout out
I
to that
just
boy Hurt.
just just before we move on, I just
Hmm.
this is kind of my view on him is he moved into a spot where you have DJ Moore as your one established. He's been a one for years. You have Rome, who everybody believes is a giant breakout candidate.
Hmm.
You got um, you got Loveland and you got Cole Komet, which they said they like to play a lot of 12 offense, which means two wide receivers and no Luther Burden on the field. So you take all of that, and it's not even a good passing situation. Chicago is notoriously horrible for passing games. That's why a quarterback's never thrown for 4,000 yards in the history of that fucking place. So, once it gets cold, the winds start blowing, passing games go to die, and they're going to have to lean on the running game. So, until that team gets a dome, there is no way in God's green earth that all of those guys can be supported. So, the only thing that can happen for Luther Burden to produce anything
Hmm.
quickly is for DJ Moore to get shipped out, maybe,
Hmm.
or Romo Dunze to be a massive bust, which he could be because he didn't do shit in year one. But if
Watch
you
your
look at
mouth.
my if you look at my
Watch your
discords,
mouth.
people tell me I'm crazy, but I'm saying
Watch your
this would
mouth,
be the
Rocco.
path. This is the only path
Don't say
for
it.
Burton to do shit, which is sad because he was the wide receiver two for years. After his breakout sophomore season, but 676 yards as a junior ain't pretty. So he was on the downward slope before he landed in this fucking quagmire. So um,
Why you over here speaking that voodoo, that bullshit into the air, man?
I'm
If
speaking the
Roma,
truth.
if
I'm
if
speaking
Roma
the truth.
Duze,
I don't
if
see a
Roma Duze
path.
end up getting hurt, I'm gonna be tight. If Roma Duze gets hurt,
I
I have him.
I didn't
I have him. I'm gonna be tight.
I
That's
didn't
fine.
say he could
I'm
get
gonna
hurt.
lose.
I said he can be
I'm
a
gonna lose it.
massive bust.
That's
But
be
that's
even worse. But that's gonna piss me off even more. that's gonna that's gonna take me to a different level. You feel me?
there's just
So
there's just no path. There's no path for Burden to do anything soon unless a lot of things change.
okay. No,
Wasted
Trey
pick.
Harris. Trey Harris, and
Now
depending
we
also
talking. Now
another
we talking.
person, another player that depending on who you ask. Some people say he could end up being the wide receiver one of this whole class, just off potential. He had one of the highest yards per route run that we've ever seen from a prospect. He had, if, whether it's man coverage or just his whole yards per route run in general. I like me some Trey Harris. I do it during the draft process and just look at over evaluations. I really did like Trey Harris, and the fact that he landed with the Chargers made me even happier because now
Hmm.
Herbert, even though they are a run-based team with Harbaugh, I automatically think Trey Harris is better than Mike Williams. I automatically think Trey Harris is better than Quentin Johnson.
Not close.
I think he's better than shit all the rest of the guys that they have on there, except for Lad McConkey,
He ain't
right?
no lad.
I like me some Trey. Him, Lad McConkey. They have Tyler Conklin. You drafted Amarion Hampton. You have Najee Harris. Now you
Gaston
can
as a
go out.
sleeper.
Right, you can go out there, be a overall balanced team to where
Mm-hmm.
you're not overly throwing it, but you're also just not constantly running the ball. I think they can be one of the relatively well balanced teams and be really good at it. So Trey Harris, I think, if you're asking me to choose between Trey Harris, Luther Burden, or Jaden Higgins, for the most part, I've gone Trey Harris just because of how easily I think he can beat out Quentin Johnson, how easily I think he can beat out Mike Williams. One,
Mm-hmm.
Mike Williams is damn near at the end of his career, and Quentin Johnson, I feel like we know who he is at this point. Could he
Mm-hmm.
make another leap? Maybe, but I think Trey Harris is a better route runner than Quentin Johnson. He might not be. I think they actually run the same kind of 40, if I'm being honest. So, if you were to ask me who I'm choosing, Trey Harris, and they both are, like I said, they're going. He's going in that same range of a Jaden Higgins, of a Luther Burden. It really just depends on what kind of flavor that you really want. But
Mm-hmm.
give me your take on Trey Harris, and we're at like that going on at that 50 mark, 51 minute mark in the
Yeah,
show.
we can move on to sleepers.
Yeah. Once again, before we even get into that, subscribe, share, like, comment, support the channel, join our Discord. It's all in the description. We're actually one the Discord. The Discord has been popping as of late. We gotten more members in there. We're having conversations. We're talking about Dynasty 24/7. Shout out to one of our actual Discord members that pointed out like we talk or we go Dynasty 24/7 365, and that's the whole purpose. When I think about being a dynasty fantasy football player, I think
Mm-hmm.
about giving or paying or being active 365 around clock. It doesn't stop. No matter if it's football season, we're in season or not, it's off season. Still going hard, still trying to figure out how to improve my team and what we can do better. But that's enough of that talky walkie walkie. Let's look
Trey
at
Harris.
yeah. Give us your feelsy on Trey Harris.
I think Trey Harris landed in a fucking nut spot. The only the only downside um, that would give me any kind of worry is this is a run heavy team. That's just Coach Harbaugh's way. Um, so sometimes they will be unbalanced if the other team can't stop the run. They're just going to hammer that with Najee Harris and Amarion Hampton. But this team is so damn efficient. We saw it down the stretch last year with basically only Lad McConkey, you know, uh, as a viable threat. I mean, uh, you had our guy, what's his face? He was dropping like every
Quentin Johnson.
single. Quentin Johnson was dropping every pass. I mean, this guy would catch the ball and kick it out with his own knee. He was so clumsy. So to get Trey Harris into this ultra uber efficient offense, and I think he's gonna slide immediately into the X. I don't see Mike Williams holding up in camp against this guy. He's gonna immediately slot into the X. And the thing that just blows the fucking mind is, we say 3 yards per route run is like the pinnacle of any wide receiver prospect
Yeah,
and really
really
puts
efficient.
him in a high class, that will translate to the NFL. Most of the guys that run 3 yards per route run, with other underlying, you have to have a baseline of athleticism and size. We get
Yeah,
that. But that is like the pinnacle for a wide receiver, and he had 5.12 yards per route run. So almost fucking double that number. Like,
so
my mind can't even wrap around that number.
speak
Um,
on it.
I mean, and we talk about the drops that Quentin Johnson had, and this guy had five drops last year, 15 in 4 years. So that's not something that we have to worry about at all. 12 12-yard A dot, so he's catching it in the intermediate of yard layers of the field, and he's got a 7.7 yards after catch. So he's catching the ball in the intermediate areas of the field, and he's taking them
Mm,
things long. He's getting almost 8 yards every time he catches the fucking ball. That's how you get to 5.12. So
mm.
this guy, with a strong running game, you got a shade lad McConkey. He's going to get a lot of single coverage out there. And what you think he's going to do with this single coverage when he catches the ball and he's hard to bring down once he's got the ball? So he's my 2.3 with a bullet. I don't feel bad at all taking him over Higgins or
Luther Burden.
Luther Burden at all. He landed in a great spot, and he should have no problem producing in year one.
No, we're on to these sleepers or guys that we particularly liked. Whether it was a good landing spot, we just liked the overall player
Mm-hmm.
in general. Who is a sleeper in 2025 for you?
For me, I was gonna say, I was gonna, my sleeper was Jack Besh, but
Mm.
the fact that he went in the second round basically means he's not a sleeper. Another guy I would have said was Pat Bryant, but um, Angelo
He
already
went in the
waxed
third.
poetic on that guy. He already waxed poetic. I mean, I can't say it any better than he did. So let me think on this for 1 second. I would say Kyle Williams, if he can even be
That's a good
considered
one. No, that's a good. That's a
if
you
he can
can.
be even considered a sleeper,
I
because I
mean,
mean he's been
he's
steamed up to almost the second round at this point.
he's been talked about a lot during this whole draft cycle. But the thing is with Kyle Williams is that and I guess no, he went in the third round. So I guess anything after the third round would be potentially considered a sleeper, if you will.
Mm.
I think that that's still day two capital. So that's not bad. If I'm looking at these fourth round, if we're keeping the correct criteria to receivers after the third, so just to name off a few who went in that fourth round, we got Chamir Dyke, Dante Thornton Jr. to the Raiders. We have Arian Smith to the Jets, Jalen Lane to the Commanders, Jalen Royals to the Chiefs, Alec,
Jalen Royals.
Alec Ayomanor to the Titans, Jordan Watkins to the 49ers. In that
Mm.
fifth round, we had Keandre Lambert Smith, Torrey Holton in the fifth round went to the Seahawks. LaJounte Wester went to the Ravens in the sixth. Jimmy Horn sixth. Tez Johnson in the seventh to the Bucks. Ricky White, who I saw you picked up in one of our leagues today. So it's who is your sleeper? Who would you say is the guy that could be higher than his value or where he was taken?
Um, well, I do kind of like Ricky Williams.
Ricky White.
I just think Ricky White. I'm sorry,
Mm.
Ricky Williams, not the guy that got in the dress with Mike Ditka years ago. Ricky Ricky White. We kind of already previewed him a little bit, but the beautiful thing about Ricky White, not Ricky Williams, Ricky White. Let me
Okay, now.
White. The thing about Ricky White is that he plays outside receiver, and that's something that the Seattle Seahawks severely lack. So, they have a lot of slot merchants there. I mean, you got maybe MVS can play outside, but the meat and potatoes of that team all play inside. So he's a guy that could find himself some opportunity, and we liked what we saw on tape. A guy that can get open. He went
Yeah.
in the seventh round, so if he's not producing in camp, he can easily be cut. But I think he could not luck, but he can kind of walk into a little bit of opportunity in Seattle. So he's a dart throw for me, but he's a guy that kind of fits a need for that team. A guy they don't really have any youth at an outside receiver position, and a guy that we like what we saw on tape. So that's why I've been kind of sneakily picking him up kind of in the after draft waiver market, basically for free. I've been trying to like, carve out some room on teams because right now my teams are pretty
That shit
loaded
is so
as
hard
far
right
as
now, bro.
prospects. So I'm even trying to sell good players just so I can hit some of these dart throws, which is kind of dumb. But it's my method to my madness.
Hey, listen, these there's a if you have a prospect that you're willing to trade up for and go get, I can't really hate on that one. The
Who you like?
choice, if I had to pick, and I think obviously the go-to would be Jalen Royals, right, to the Chiefs. But
Too obvious.
if
Too obvious.
if I can't do Jalen Royals, if y'all gonna make me do something different, okay. Deontay Thornton Jr., who went to the Raiders. I think one, yes, it does look a little murky in there. Um, where when it comes to targets, because you still got Jacoby Meyer, you have Brock Bowers, you do now have Ashton Genty in there.
Hmm.
Uh, uh, now Trey Tucker, depending on who you ask, he adds explosiveness to that. But I think Deontay Thornton comes in. He's a legit 6'5", 205, 208 pounds, and he ran a 4.30. And this is somebody who worked mainly on the outside, but man, no, like I said, targets. He went just he went to the same team that our guy Jack Betch went to, so it's going to be Jack Betch. I think the starting lineup is something that is like Jacoby Myers. You have Jack Betch, who could be your big slot, and then Deontay Thornton on the outside as your other outside receiver. And I think that's kind of it's not then Brock Bowers as your other playmaker in the middle. That's
Hmm.
kind of a nice offense if you ask me to go with a pretty serviceable Geno Smith. So if I had to choose my sleeper, it would be Deontay Thornton Jr. because he just has a very rare athletic profile that we don't see.
And one other thing, I want to kind of do an addendum on my Ricky White because I'm obviously bad at researching while talking, and I wasn't able to bloviate long enough to get my hands on this stat, but I knew it was there. Last 2 years for Ricky White, 2023, 3.83 yards per route run, getting close to that Trey Harris stratosphere, and last year 2.93. So um, definitely strong indicators of future success. If he can catch on with Seattle, he has a real shot, and he matches up with Sam Darnold's um, kind of strengths, which is YOLO deep ball. So it
Mm.
should be interesting if he can, find his way and survive training camp in the preseason.
And that is our show, baby. Another one in the books, another one for y'all, once again, to everybody, wherever you view us, whether it's on a computer, on your phone, hell, if it's on a goddamn AOL type dial up connection, baby. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. We still got so much content. The NFL draft is over. These guys, shoot, some Ricky mini camps at this point are over. We're starting to get into the real football activity of things.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, I still think there's guys that could be traded as of in the next month or 2 months or before training camp. So stay tuned. We still got locked and loaded. We actually have we haven't even got to the announcement that we recently signed as of yet. We won't talk about it because we ran out of time. But next episode, we're going to talk about a big announcement.
Yeah.
Finally, since we signed the, it's finally been signed. We can speak on it and bring y'all into the fold. So once again, thank y'all for watching. It's another episode. My name is Hancho, and this is my guy.
Shiriako. Y'all just call me Rocco, please.
And this is Fourth in Fantasy, your dynasty playbook to more fantasy wins. Or damn it, I messed up again.
I was gonna
Your fantasy playbook to dynasty wins.
I was gonna
Here
say
we
you
go.
nailed it, but then
I was
you
like, fuck.
you you almost had it.
Yeah. I'm gonna get it. Watch it next episode. I'm not
you
messing
better
up next time.
you better
Y'all gonna
put
understand that one.
you better put that shit on the board.
Mm. Y'all take care,
Get the
man. Thank you for the
teleprompter.
support. We back at it, man. Rocco, you be good, my G.
Yes, yes, sir.